Having your own modular platform is the cool thing these days. Volkswagen have the MEB platform, Mercedes have the MEA platform, and BMW have some kind of modular platform. I don't remember what it's called. So it makes sense really that Hyundai would come out with their own modular platform, and they have, and it's called the E-GMP. E-GMP, E-GIMP. E-GIMP. So obviously I've got to say, bring out the GIMP. So firstly, if you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing, press that subscribe button and press the little bell icon to be notified of other videos I do. So we have the E-GMP, the Electric-Global Modular Platform. That's from Hyundai. Hyundai Group, they're pretty big really. They include Kia as well. So although I'm Mr. EV, really I've been Mr. Kia e-Niro for the past 18 months. I have a particular interest in anything Hyundai do. They've unveiled it today online. You can watch it on YouTube. I'll put a link up. And it's interesting. I didn't understand a lot of it, to be honest.
헤어핀 권성 기술은 헤어핀 형상을 닮은 구조의 각진 코일을 코어의 슬롯에 삽입하여 제작되는데.
But I'm going to go through, instead of just reading out a press release, which I could do, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and give you a few little nuggets of information or just opinions I have about it. So it's a skateboard design. Most EVs have this kind of skateboard design. The idea being that you've got obviously the wheels, front and back. You've got a motor either at the front or the back, both if it's all-wheel drive. You've got the batteries that sit in the middle. Very low down, it creates a low center of gravity, which improves handling and weight distribution, things like that. So you've got batteries stuck in the middle, and that's good. All these modular platforms, they're all skateboard designs. It just makes sense, and this is no different. What excites me about this is Hyundai and Kia, they already make the most efficient powertrains in the business apart from Tesla. So you've got them, they're practically the same. Volkswagen have done well with their MEB platform, but up until now it's been Hyundai and Kia with really efficient cars. So this is just going to take that even further. So the interesting thing is that all of these existing Hyundai cars, they've already had more than one power type really. So you've got your EVs, so you've got your e-Niro, but you've also got hybrid versions and you've got fossil fuel versions. So they've been able to create such an efficient powertrain and such an efficient package, even with that constraint, the idea that you've got this massive engine sat in the front for some of your models. This does away with all of that because this is EV specific. This is just EVs, not hybrids, not anything else, just EVs. And that's what excites me about this. So let's talk about it. Being modular, it can be as big or as small as they need it to be. That kind of goes without saying. So it means that any car size is absolutely fine for this. I'm assuming vans as well, in fact, if they wanted that, if they even do that. I don't know if they do. If you look at Volkswagen's buggy concept and like the ID Buzz, which is their camper, you can see what's possible with one of these platforms. You can do anything with it. It's fantastic. So yeah, it's a modular platform, battery in the middle, right at the bottom, as low as you can possibly get it. This platform is, from the beginning, all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. So you've got a motor at the back for rear-wheel drive in most models, but then some can have the possibility of having a motor at the front to drive the front wheels. And it can switch between all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive easily, so for efficiency really. If you don't need all the power going to all the wheels, what's the point? So it will just put it in the back. So that's exciting. They spent a long time in the presentation talking about safety, and that's a good thing, of course. So it's obviously got crumple zones wherever you want it. Because you've got no massive engine at the front, actually that already creates quite a good zone at the front that can crumple up. One of the things that does bother some people, especially petrol heads, is that they worry about the battery being a potential fire risk. It is a potential fire risk, but not as much, arguably, as sticking in explosive fuel into a fuel tank. But anyway, what they have done is they've obviously made sure it's very well protected and it's cushioned all sides. It's very high density steel, all the rest of it. So you can look at that presentation on that. Bottom line is it's safe, and more important than the battery, of course, is the passengers. So it's safe for the passengers as well, of course. So that's a great thing. The reason it's so important to protect the battery, more than it being a possible fire risk, and even that is a very low risk. I've got to say this, it's a very low risk. Some petrol heads think that driving around in an EV is like driving around with a bomb under you, especially when you hear of all these cases of Samsung phones exploding and things like that. There's battery management systems in all EVs that are very good at protecting the battery, and even if there is a chance of one cell igniting, it won't spread very quickly to the rest of the pack, if at all. So they're really good at that. Nothing to worry about. Also, these batteries, they're already very, very solid. I mean, the casing they're in is very solid already. In fact, there was a picture the other day shared on Twitter of a Jaguar I-Pace that seemingly was parked on a bollard in London. Admittedly, it's difficult to find any parking space in London, so fair enough. But it's parked on the bollard, and you can see that the battery case is not touched at all. It's perfectly fine. So the batteries are already very solid in all EVs. They've clearly put a lot of thought into it, though, for this modular platform, and it's good to know that you're driving around in a very safe car, of course. And it's also good to know that if you do get in an accident, you're not going to write the whole car off if the battery gets touched. This kind of makes sure that battery, which is the most expensive part by far in an EV, it makes sure that's all nicely protected. So insurance providers will hopefully take that into consideration as well. It's good to see just how excited they are about the cabins being great and spacious, only because it's an EV platform, and that's really worth stressing, that what they can do with these cabins, you just can't do it in an ICE car. So they're obviously proud of that. So it will be interesting to see what they do with it from next year onwards when the first car comes out. The first car coming, by the way, is the Ioniq 5, and that's going to be a crossover, another crossover, but it's based on their 45 concept, which I really loved. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Anyway, back to all the specs. They have teased the possibility of high performance models with this platform. It will go 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, so that's 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.5 seconds. And there's a maximum speed of 260 kilometers, which is about 160 miles. You can't really do those speeds unless you're on the Autobahn or on a track or something, so it's kind of meaningless. But I suppose 0 to 100, 3.5 seconds, that's enough to get some hearts racing. I think I'd probably pass out at about that kind of speed. But it's, and of course Tesla owners will be looking at it and saying, well, no, we can do much better than that. They talked about range in the presentation, and this is the bit that struck me as a bit strange. They're talking about 500 kilometer or 310 mile range. And that's the only figure they said. They didn't, as far as I remember, they didn't say, well, it will start at that and it will go more. So my guess is that they've designed this around existing packs and they've wanted to make it all as self-contained, as small as possible. So they've probably gone with their 64 kilowatt hour pack. So with a 64 kilowatt hour pack in the e-Niro, that gets you 282 miles. That's WLTP range. That same 64 kilowatt hour pack in the Kona gets like 300 mile range. So if they're talking about 310 miles, they're not getting that much more efficiency out of the same pack, assuming they're talking about 64 kilowatt hour pack. But what I imagine will happen is that they're probably adjusting our expectations a little bit. They've said that the first cars coming out will be 2021. That does include one from Kia, which is as yet unannounced, and the Ioniq 5. So they're probably just saying that those will be 310 miles. And just to say, I think 310 miles is an absolutely perfect range. I mean, I think that's really good because that is a good balance between range and price. Once you start getting big batteries, they cost an awful lot. And also the efficiency of a car is just better when it's a smaller battery. You've got to consider the weight of a battery, which is quite a lot. So I imagine, it being a modular platform, I imagine they will, quite easily add cells and they'll bring out cars that have much better ranges than that. But anyway, that just struck me as a little bit strange, especially given that Mercedes' recent announcement was for their EQS, and they were talking about, I think it was 400 mile range or something like that. All I would say is 300 miles is more than enough, really. I've lived with it for 18 months. I've driven all over the place. 300 miles is a very good range. But I think the advantage of saying about this 310 miles range is it means that they can offer cars at a decent price, and I think that's key for Hyundai and Kia. They're really good value cars, and that's where they can really beat the competition. But we'll have to wait and see, of course. So the biggest news on this platform is the 800 volt charging system. This is a really big deal. The only 800 volt car we have at the moment is the Porsche Taycan. You've got the Audi e-tron GT coming out next year, which is a sexy looking car. I do love the look of that. But most EVs are on a 400 volt system, and that means that they tend to charge up quite slow usually. So this effectively doubles it. It means that you can go 400 kilometers, 250 miles. You can charge that in 18 minutes. 18 minutes, which is really cool. Bear in mind, my e-Niro takes 44 minutes to charge up to 80% on a high power charger. So 18 minutes. And also, just to give you another frame of reference, I did an 877 mile journey, Land's End to John O'Groats recently, and I did that in one day in my e-Niro. And I had 4 hours of charging in that for that trip. Some of that were slow charges, of course, so I wasn't always charging up to the 77 kilowatt potential, but you know, that was a lot. 4 hours of charging. I mean, I've got to be honest, it was good. I'm glad I had 4 hours of charging because, you know, it meant I was getting decent breaks and for eating and toilet breaks and all the rest. So that was fine, I'm not complaining. But people do complain about charge speed, especially if you've got, maybe if you don't have a driveway and you do have to rely on infrastructure, public charging infrastructure, then it is good, of course, to have that available. And if you are doing a long road trip and your bladder does last an awful lot longer than mine, then having 800 volt charging means that, yes, you do 18 minutes of charging, get 250 miles and you're on your way. So that's pretty amazing. And the most exciting thing about this, I think, actually, is that this will be the first time we get 800 volt charging in a proper, decent kind of family car that people can afford. Hyundai and Kia, they don't make expensive cars. They make pretty reasonable ones. I mean, you could argue, of course, that their EVs are expensive because they are compared to fossil fuel, but still relatively cheap, and certainly cheaper than the e-tron GT and the Taycan. So that's really interesting. It'll be interesting to see come 2021 what the prices are going to be like. But you know, if we get the Ioniq 5 coming at, let's say, about £40,000, then that's still easily half the cost of the e-tron GT. So that's exciting. And of course, if I had 800 volt charging in my Niro, it meant I would have reached John O'Groats about midnight instead of 3 in the morning. So that would have been nice. The other really exciting thing about this is the potential of bi-directional charging. So bi-directional charging means that normally, of course, you just charge the car. With bi-directional charging, as you probably guess, you can get power out of the car as well, out of the high voltage battery. You can see this already actually with the Honda E. You can plug in stuff like, I don't know, microwaves or game consoles and things like that, which is great. So in their presentation, that's kind of what they showed. They actually used a case of like going to a caravan park and plugging in all these different devices and things.
전기차의 배터리는 마치 커다란 보조 배터리처럼 캠핑 장소에서 전자제품을 사용하거나
They also mentioned charging another EV up.
혹은 다른 전기차를 충전하는 등.
I wonder how fast you could charge another EV, whether it's just a case of plugging it in and you get like a 3 kilowatt trickle charge like you do at charging at home, or whether they'll enable faster AC charging through it. I don't know enough about the technicalities. Anyway, let's forget that for the moment. What excites me the most is vehicle to grid, and that's something they didn't mention. But if bidirectional charging is even a possibility, then I would have thought that makes that much more likely. We're kind of held up a little bit with the CCS specification. If you don't know, CCS is the type of plug that most EVs, the vast majority of EVs use. Some use something called CHAdeMO. Nissan Leaf uses CHAdeMO. And with CHAdeMO, in the CHAdeMO specification, you can already do vehicle to grid. That means that you can park up at home, and let's say you had a power cut. In theory, you could use the car battery to power your home. Or what most people would use it for is charging the car up when it's cheap. So a lot of us have cheap charging rates in the middle of the night. You charge your car when it's cheap, and then you can use that power back into your house, which is vehicle to home, or back into the grid and they get paid money for it, and that's vehicle to grid. The national grid in the UK would love us to have more of this kind of vehicle to grid technology because it would balance the grid. It would help balance the grid. They have like peak times, you know, when everyone turns their kettles on and everyone starts cooking and things like that. The electricity usage gets very expensive, and it's difficult for them to manage it. If we had EVs that were parked at home, then that would eliminate that problem. So anyway, that's the technology I'm really interested in, and this, I imagine, enables it. I'd be interested to read your comments because a lot of you know far more about this than I do. So that's great. What they didn't mention was AC charging speed. So at the moment, The e-Niro does 7.4 kilowatts, or you can get it up to 11 kilowatts, which is 3-phase charging. You can get it up to 11 kilowatts in the new model. And probably the Kona as well. I'm not definite, but I think the Kona as well. They didn't mention whether this could go up to maybe 22 kilowatts, because that would be nice. A lot of AC chargers are around that do 22 kilowatts, and up until now, really very few cars can do that. I know the Renault Zoe is certainly one of them. The new Audi e-tron has just been upgraded to do 22 kilowatts, and probably some Teslas as well. So that would be nice if it did that. That wasn't mentioned. So 23 EVs we have to look forward to that will be based upon this platform coming in the next few years, in fact in the next 5 years, up until 2025. And some of those will be Hyundai, some of them will be Kia, some will be Genesis, the sub-brand that Hyundai don't talk about very much at the moment actually, but they do have it. They're saying they hope to sell 1 million EVs by 2025, which is a really low ball. It's a really low ball figure, I think. They sold 7.4 million vehicles in 2018 across the Hyundai group alone. So just saying 1 million EVs up until 2025 is a bit rubbish, I think. But I'm hoping they're just, again, managing expectations, or perhaps they just don't know what's going to happen with the EV market. But you know, you can look at the graph and it's exponential growth at the moment. So I think 1 million is going to be beaten. I just hope they can supply enough to get more than 1 million, because it's going to be depressing if they don't. So all the pieces are falling into place. There was a recent announcement that they were investing in Ionity. They were part of the group now. In fact, they've been part of the group for a while, but it was like an official announcement recently. If you're watching this from another country, Ionity is a Europe-wide charging network. Really expensive one, actually. But they do have high-powered chargers. And these chargers do enable this 800 volt, which is 350 kilowatt charging. So they're really great. They've just been very expensive for anyone like me that drives a Kia. The group was set up by most of the German manufacturers. In fact, the VW group is like the main one. So you've got them and BMW and Mercedes, all that lot. So Hyundai joining that is great. That means that if you have one of these cars, you'll be able to stop off on Ionity chargers and get that wonderful quick charging. And hopefully it won't be too expensive. So there will be some sort of charging plan, if there isn't already. In fact, there might be already. There'll be some sort of charging plan which will enable you to charge at less than the standard rate. The standard rate at the moment is 79 pence per kilowatt hour, which is madness. So you've got the Ionity tie-up. You've also got their recent announcement about NVIDIA. So they're going to use NVIDIA chips for their infotainment systems. Reading between the lines, I think they're also going to be using NVIDIA for autonomy as well, because NVIDIA were already working with Tesla for a while on that before Tesla started doing their own thing. So I think NVIDIA probably have some pretty good equipment there and pretty good tech. And Mercedes also starting to use NVIDIA. So that's an interesting little one that we'll have to pay attention to, but that's coming 2022. You've also got Hyundai's Ioniq brand that they announced. I did a video about that if you want to click that link. And then of course we have this announcement now. So all the pieces are all kind of coming together, and I think it's going to be a really interesting 2021 in terms of what cars they produce. I'm really interested to see what Kia do. So I imagine Kia will use this system for their brand new SUV that's coming in 2021, and they won't kind of stick it inside a Niro. I don't think that's going to happen. As much as I would like them to have all-wheel drive and 800 volt charging in an e-Niro, it might not happen. So I'm quite excited to see what comes out of Kia. And of course the Ioniq 5 coming next year as well, I think is going to be really good. I'm excited about what this technology can enable in cheaper cars. So, you know, Kia and Hyundai do some very, very good value, cheap fossil fuel cars. I would love to see them put all of this in a little city car and see how that competes with the Mini and the Honda E and the Fiat 500e. So I'd love to see that. So anyway, that'll be in the coming years. But so far, that's all I have for now. If there's anything that I haven't answered, or if there's anything I've gotten wrong, and that does happen quite a lot, then do please correct me. And I look forward to hearing what you think about this. And if you're excited by Hyundai or Kia, or if it's just me. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you press the like button, of course, and press the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of other videos that I do. And please share all over the place if you enjoyed it and want to tell your friends, if you have friends geeky enough to actually care about the e-GMP. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.